All right, Genesis chapter 8. The flood has happened. Noah and his family and the animals are in the ark. The ark is floating. Now let's see what happens next. In this chapter, we learn the flood ceases. Noah sends forth a dove, which returns with an olive leaf. He releases all living things from the ark. He offers sacrifices. Seed time, harvest, and seasons are ensured. Fascinating things that are happening. Now, from a standpoint, this is something that's interesting. Is from a standpoint of Latter-day prophecy, we understand that the Garden of Eden, that Adam and Eve were in, was in the United States area, on that continent somewhere. And that's where Adam and Eve lived. That's where their family lived. That's where they had. So the Noah's Ark took off from that area and then left from that area, basically. So this is kind of where we're getting, is where they're up in the ocean, this grand ocean, and now they are going to be finding, after the 150 days of being on the ark, they're now going to be finding land soon. So verse 1, and God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and waters assuaged. So now a great wind is coming up. The wind is blowing, thing that's pushing the water around, moving it, basically. Verse 2, the fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. So we finally get a calming of the storm as far as things that are happening. There's no more new water coming on. Verse 3, the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. So after the flood was done, things started to settle back down, and then the water started to go down and work their way out. Hugh Nibley, in his book, One Eternal Round, had this to say. He says, the word continually, indeed. Their trouble was that both the winds and the drying up continued until the earth was sorely plagued by drought and heat. The record is full and specific and clearly illustrated in the career of Abraham, always on the move, looking for grass and water, planting trees, digging wells for those who were to follow, never able to settle down because there was a continuation of a famine in the land. So they went from this extreme of lots and lots of water to having a dearth of water by the time Abraham's around as well. So we can see that the climate kind of went in that direction, basically. Not just the waters receding, but it got dry, really, really dry, big drought. Verse 4, the ark rested in the seventh month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. In the Bible dictionary, you can go look that up and see what it says about it. We know that there's actually a mountain in Turkey known as Ararat, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots of speculation that the ark is up there somewhere. Some claim to have found it, but I don't know really if that's true, or if they're just trying to see a perspective of the ark in mountains and rocks and things. Although if it was there, it's thousands of years old and would be pretty petrified or destroyed by the elements, water, rain, working on it, heat, cold, would eventually rot the wood and it would go away. So it is believed traditionally that is where Noah landed. So he came from North America to Turkey and settled, and that's where they went out. And it's fascinating because when you look at even the theory of evolution, when they talk about how evolution happened, a lot of people believe that it's that area from Turkey south towards the Middle East is where they see, these older nations, and they spread out from there. And they have all these things that are going on in that time, basically, is that they kind of see that part, the Middle East, North Africa, that whole area is part of where the cradle of life began. Things happened from there, and started there. What they don't realize is it did start there again, but there was life before that, and that happened more in the North American continent. We don't have a lot of geological or archaeological evidence to prove that, but that's what the scriptures tell us, especially with more latter-day revealed scriptures as well, which is the pearl of great price, if you're interested in learning more about those things. So verse 5, the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the windows of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. And he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. So they're finding some things, and he sent out these birds to find out, is there a place for us to land? Is there somewhere where we can go? So we learn a bit more about this. In fact, dove is in the Bible dictionary if you want to go look that up as well. Verse 9, but the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him into the ark. For the waters were on the face of the whole earth, and he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. So he sent a raven out, didn't get response. He sent the dove came back. Basically, there's nowhere for the dove to settle, so it came back. So he waited a little while, sent the dove out again. In verse 11, and the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. So she found a branch. Then the dove brought it back. It's cool that it was an olive leaf. Olive leaf, this type of a symbol comes from this idea that almost granting peace, granting clemency, extending the olive leaf to somebody. So this is in a way metaphorical, showing that God is granting clemency and peace to Noah and his people, to say, your time in the ark is done soon and you're going to be off. So kind of a cool idea where that comes from. He stayed another 7 days and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him anymore. So the dove left and never came back. So the dove probably found a place to go. Verse 13, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. So he finally went out and went, oh my gosh, it's dry. We got dry land. We're here. This is amazing. Hugh Nibley, in his book, Tenting, Toll, and Taxing, that's a chapter in his the book, I think it's volume 1 or 2 of the collected works of Hugh Nibley. Volume 10, sorry. The Ancient State. He talks about, after the flood, a great wind came up to dry everything out, which meant desert conditions. So a lot of wind, everything dried up, and we end up with more deserty conditions going on. Verse 14, in the 2nd month, in the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. So one thing that's interesting is we're getting a lot of dates, some calendar stuff here, the 7th month of this date or whatever. And some people might ask, well, what date was that? How can we correlate that? How can we make that fit? The challenge of doing that is, in the ancient world, there were lunar calendars, there were solar calendars, there were, it's hard to completely define that. Some people, I'm sure, have tried it, and maybe they've gotten pretty close to doing that. So I didn't add any of that research in here, but you can go look up some of those findings to see if you can understand it better. But we're not 100% sure. It's hard to be 100% sure as to what it means and when did it start and how are they referring to those dates. Okay, so just understand that concept of time and how they're measuring time sometimes can be a little different. So we're not 100% clear as to how that would work out. We can't say, oh, this happened in March of whatever BC. Basically, we can't be quite that accurate. So it's more of a point of reference as to this happened this time, this happened this time, this happened this time, to give us something to correlate the time frame between them apart, basically, more than a specific date. So verse 18, and Noah went forth with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, and their kinds went forth out of the ark. Now, this is something that's really interesting, is I've noticed in some of the apocryphal writings, some of the ancient writings, that there actually are stories of more than just Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives that went with him, that he had other family with him, even Melchizedek, the great prophet and high priest. So there could be more people there than just the immediate family of Noah. we're not 100% sure, but there could be a possibility. There are stories that there's possible there were other people, like Noah's brother, who was supposedly Noah's brother was the father of Melchizedek, basically. Sorry. All right. Verse 20, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So we get the idea of the sacrifices, which Bible Dictionary, you can look that up, Bible Dictionary of altar. Noah built this altar, just like Adam had built an altar to offer sacrifices to God, but Noah built an altar to offer sacrifices as well. So reinstating this idea with the covenants, with the promises, and worshiping God, and doing these things as well. It's interesting that there's a place in Turkey, oh man, what is that? What is the place called? Tepe Göbekli, that they believe is one of the most ancient temples in the world. It's so old, it's phenomenal. It predates most other cultures in the Middle East area, in that part of the world. But they find there was like some kind of like an altar, and then there was like a ring of like a wall around it, circular wall, and then it was kind of built like concentric rings. There was other walls built out. They think it started as a small altar and temple, and then people kind of expanded and built it over the years, and then it was later buried and completely disappeared. They didn't find it till recently, and they're still researching it. But there's carvings, engravings of animals all over inside this thing, of different animals from all over the world. And so they're kind of surprised that why would all these different animals be there, because they're from all over different parts of the world. Even animals that aren't native to the Middle East are there in this. And how could that be, and what happened with that? Could that be part of where Noah had his altar, and maybe his descendants decided this is a sacred place, we want to build a protection around it, and then we're going to build on this, and then traditions changed and interpretations of religion changed, and it became a temple, or people went to worship thinking the altar was sacred or something. That's possible. That's very possible. Maybe there's more of a connection to Noah with this as well. But it's a fun, Tepe Göbekli, I think is the name of the place. Kind of fun. Some documentaries you can find online about it. Verse 21, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So now this is part of that promise saying, okay, we're not going to do this again. Let's not do this again. Basically, we're not going to destroy everything and start over again. So that is where this chapter ends. Stay tuned for chapter 9 for the continuation.